Hello, everybody, and welcome to today's live Q&A session. My name is Marcy from wavesofcommunication.com, and I am an intuitive speech and language pathologist consultant, and I help parents teach their late talking children how to use the words they need to share their wisdom with the world. And I do that in my Waves of Communication parent coaching programs. And I know that there are lots of people who follow my page and my group, the Language Facilitation Resources group, who watch me on YouTube and join me here on Facebook every week so that I do these, that's why I do these live Q&A sessions, to be able to answer questions from any parent who has some issue about your child's communication that you want to know some advice about, or get a little consulting. That's what I do here on these live Q&A sessions. And I have a number of questions that I have collected from just in the past day or so from people in my Language Facilitation Resources group, and also here on my Waves of Communication page. Okay, so thank you so much for joining me today, everybody. I'm so glad you're here, even if you don't have a question watching, because there are actually many of these questions overlap with each other. So it's going to be helpful information, hopefully, for you as you move forward on your language facilitation journey with your child. And I'm going to preface my answers to all these questions by letting you know and reminding you that you as parents are the best language facilitators. So what I'm going to be sharing with you is what could potentially be happening that's blocking your child's progress. If you're finding, a lot of the questions here are about things you're trying to get your children to do, I'm going to let you know what could be blocking your child's progress and also potentially give you strategies that will help you move forward. So like I said, again, if you're just joining me, welcome. And if you have questions, please post them in the comments section of this video. All right, let's get started. So the first questions that I had were surrounding handwriting. And interestingly, the first two questions, the first two people were talking about how their children can't or don't like handwriting. And then the second one was about a child who's hyperlexic, who enjoys letter writing and things like that. So here's the thing. Like I said at the beginning of this video, and like if you have followed me, I am a speech language pathologist. I'm not a handwriting expert, but what I do often talk about with parents who are in my program is about what might be causing children to not like to do anything that you give them. So these strategies would apply if you're trying to work with your child on handwriting, but also potentially if you're trying to get your child to do anything, to follow any directions or learn anything new from you. The first thing you have to understand is, why is it that your child isn't interested when you're trying to teach them? Because if you're, communicating, like there's two folks, Valerie and Angina, both let me know that they have children who are of handwriting age, but they don't like to hold a pencil. They don't like to do the handwriting task. So my suggestion whenever I talk to a parent about trying to get your child to do anything that they don't like, and late talkers don't like to say words, so that's why I usually talk about speech, but I'm kind of breaking the mold here to talk about handwriting, because it really doesn't have much to do with handwriting as a skill. Unless your child physiologically can't hold a pencil, it's all about their choices to participate or try at the activities that you are presenting to them. And I'll tell you what, it makes a big, big difference the way you are presenting whatever activity you are presenting to your child. If it seems very dictatorship or direction or demand based, you have to demand them to sit in a seat. You have to demand them to do the work. Even if it's a demand for them to sit with you, your child could be so distracted by the fact that all of these demands are coming at them for skills that they're not really enjoying or comfortable with, and they aren't even past the fact that they don't like to be there trying to do this thing with you. And that's actually blocking their ability to have fun and learn how to handwrite from you. So no matter what you're using as strategies to teach your child handwriting, and by the way, in response to that question, in my Language Facilitation Resources group, you can find the response to actually strategies for handwriting that I don't know because I'm not a handwriting expert. There is a method called Handwriting Without Tears, and the same people who wrote those methods do keyboarding and lots of other sort of manual dexterity writing implements, ways, handwriting and keyboarding, to do it with fun, to add actual fun activities that make the activity less painful or a pressure or a demand. So like I said, I'm not an expert in handwriting, but if your child does not like to do handwriting, if you were my client, I would say you have to make that anything surrounding the handwriting as fun and no demand involved as possible. So what you might try to do is show your child how to write things with their finger in sand or shaving cream. I know that these are strategies the OTs use, and they just really don't make the handwriting thing a big deal, the event, the task, the chore of handwriting. They make it not a chore. Any therapist I know that ever works with families or works with kids makes the job very fun. So the first thing is look up some strategies from OTs who are used to teaching handwriting in a fun way and incorporate those strategies with your child 100% fun. No pressure, no expectation even of them meeting any skills. And then if they do try at all to follow you with the strategies you learn from those OTs, the important thing is that you actually do a great job in reinforcing and praising them for trying, for giving it a go at all, for holding the pencil, for even sitting down with you to practice handwriting. You know, make sure your child really understands how much you appreciate that they are trying to do something that they don't really like to do. And this is true for late talking too. You have to make the entire process fun. In fact, that's what I put in the caption of this. If it isn't fun, it isn't fun. This is the fundamental. The strategies, the flashcards, the worksheets, all of that stuff is secondary to making your language facilitation or any facilitation, if you're trying to teach your child to do anything, must be fun, not only for your child, but also for you as a parent. So your child actually perceives from you, this is the intuition part about how your child already learns to communicate with you, your child perceives when you're trying to do strategies that don't feel fun to you. And if whatever you're using to practice handwriting is not very exciting for your child, then it's not going to be fun for you because you feel the energy from your child. And both of you sitting down to do something you don't like is not going to be helpful for you to move forward. So any kind of strategies that are challenging for you, look for specific strategies to facilitate that task. If it's handwriting, talk to an OT. If it's, you know, safety, you know what I mean? These kinds of things. And then use those strategies yourself, but have fun while you're doing it. Must have fun. Write with your finger, draw on the walls, paint with soap, anything that doesn't involve the things that your child doesn't like the pencil. Use something else. Use markers or crayons, other things that make it more fun. Okay. Now the next question I had is from Emily, who says she has a hyperlexic little one. She didn't say how old, but hyperlexic children, or children who have this categorization of their personality and behavior and learning, are they gravitate towards letters, and they learn them very early, maybe even before 2 years old. They learn what letters are, they learn how to spell things out, they learn how to read by decoding words very, very early in life. And so what happens with hyperlexic kids, that's their superpower, right? So child's going to gravitate towards learning with their superpower. And if letters and numbers and reading comes very easily to your child, helping them use that superpower to facilitate language is going to be very important. So what you want to do is you want to relate any verbal speech that you think that your child would be wanting to communicate whenever they're using letters and numbers. Maybe they're trying to spell out things for you, but in combination to whatever they're using with their letters, if it's not completely sharing their idea, you have to match what you see your child doing. So if they're spelling out words, that's great, but you can't take the words at 100% face value, because your child may not, unless they're using like a rapid prompting method or something like that, where they're spelling out everything that they're saying in those phrases, which is a whole different way of communicating. This is to transfer hyperlexic skills into verbal speech. You must transfer their hyperlexic talents into words when they are communicating with you using spelling, or because they're probably using both, nonverbal communication with gestures or pointing to words or even things like that that are not verbal speech, in addition to the words that they spell out. So they're using other nonverbal things, and verbal speech is over here. Your child's where they're comfortable with the letters and the gestures and things like that. But you as a mom still have to interpret what your child is communicating to you. So if it is spelling out the word, you know, whatever, I'm trying to think, they could be spelling out, you know, princess even. That could mean that the child wants to watch a princess movie, or they want to play princess, or they want to whatever. You have to look at the context of whatever your child is spelling out or pointing out as a single word or a thing that they see, and understand in your head how to put that together into their real meaning for what they want to communicate. Because what happens so many times when kids are using another method, like spelling out words or rapid prompting method, the parents look at that typing or writing or spelling as the child's complete communication, and it's not. It's just one bit of their vocabulary that they're combining with the other things so that you understand the whole message. And so you as a parent need to know what that whole message is. Maybe it's princess movie please, and they spelled out the word princess. Then you have to say the words princess, princess movie please, to change that, maybe spell it out into the request for what your child wants. Your child may be using spelling out words not just to request things, though. They could also be using it to communicate how they feel about things, or things that they are enjoying, or things that they're doing. Maybe things that they observe, like if they observe someone in the shower, they could spell the word wet. And that's how you know what your child is doing. So if they have a communication skill, it's true with sign language, with any kind of verbal system, picture systems that your child is using that aren't verbal speech. The technique is to mold those things that they are using and change them into the real messages that you see in the whole picture. And then you need to model the verbal speech for those messages that are coming out of your child. This is how you know the words that your child wants to say. This is why parents are better at language facilitation than therapists are, because you spend your whole life trying to do this deciphering with your child. And what happens is when your child comes up with a system, like pictures or signs or words that they spell out or things like that, single words even, you start to take that speech or whatever they're producing as their entire message, and it's not the way to go. They don't have a whole system of language. That's what verbal speech is going to do for them. And that's what you're going to do with language facilitation by helping them transfer this combination of things that they're using. Every late talker uses a combination. They never use just one until they get to verbal speech. And even when they get to verbal speech, they use their gestures too. But the verbal speech, you have to understand by looking at your child everything. These are the messages that they have, okay? All right, not seeing any more questions, but I do see some people watching. So if you do have a question, please post it in the comments. Now I'm going to move on to the next one. And there are 5 people who asked a very similar question. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the thing. And here are the kids. There's Jason, who has a 4-year-old. There's Masoon, who has a 2.5-year-old. There's Tanya, who didn't tell her child's age. There's Aparna, who has a 5-year-old. And Shah, who didn't tell me her child's age. For those of you who put questions on in my posts before, these are the responses for you. And all of these parents have said a very similar situation is going on in their household. Their children, if they are saying words, are only saying the words that are being modeled for them. They're only imitating words. They're not using any combinations of words, and they're not even necessarily saying words unless someone prompts them to do it. They aren't moving from these single words or repetitive language into spontaneous speech, even though their parents keep trying to get them to say more words. So here's what I'm going to tell all of you and everyone else who this is happening. This is the #1 issue that happens to most late talkers who have been in therapy. And by the way, a lot of these parents have also said that their children have been in therapy for a while, and maybe speech therapy, and some of them also behavior intervention therapy too, like ABA or some kind of behavior therapy. So what happens when children are at this stage of communication? It reflects to me, whenever I see a family like this, I understand that how the child has learned to talk. And this is what I want all of you to think about who have this situation going on. How did your child learn to say those words that they are saying? And I would venture to guess that they were taught how to say the words that they're saying by having someone say a word and have them imitate it. And they were rewarded somehow, even with a, yeah, you did it, or good job, or good talking, or something like that, when the child did say the word. At least a bunch of times, and they probably have been in therapy a whole bunch of times, and every time your child said a word, they heard someone say, great job, good talking, you did it. Maybe if your child is in behavior intervention, they got a tangible reward when they said words, like they got to eat something, or play a toy, or take a break, or something like that, whenever they said a word. This is definitely a way to teach children to talk, but it is a behavior way of training a child to say words. It's not the same as natural speech language facilitation of natural verbal speech. Here's how it's different. Natural verbal speech does not require a prompt or a reward. You teach the words that your children want to say by saying those words and modeling them over and over and over again, while your child is in the experience of the time that they need to say those words right then and there, okay? So when children are saying words that they learn, or they're expected, because all of you parents who have asked this question are expecting your children to say words. That's how you know that they're not doing it, right? You have requested them to say a word. Maybe you are withholding an object and waiting for them to say the word. Maybe your therapist told you to do this. Maybe your therapist told you to put everything out of reach and wait for your child to try to say a word before they get the object. And if your child doesn't say the word without you on their own, then you are instructed to prompt them. Do you want the thing? Say thing. And then your child does do that, because in therapy, that's how it works. If you want the reward, if you want the treat, if you want the good job, if you want the whatever, then you have to do this task of saying a word. So you can see how words are taught as tasks. And I would venture to say that all of you parents, Jason, Masoon, Tanya, Parnan, Shah, All of your children have been taught to say words in response to a prompt with a reward. And this is why they're stuck, because they don't understand how to use those words on their own without the setup structure of, I can't get what I want, I have to ask a person, I have to do something to get the gateway, to be the key, to be the whatever it is, to release that object, to do whatever it is to get the object. And if your child's only using nouns and no verbs or any sentences, then they are using words as their tool to get the things or make things happen or make things stop happening. That's it. It's a request-based reason or method for talking. Say a word, something happens, or say a word, something stops. That's it. And it's a very effective way to use speech, and it does help kids communicate their wants and needs to their parents. And this is how all of your children have evolved in their talking. But something important is missing for all of you families, and that this is what it is. And it kind of goes back to what I talked about at first. When you are trying to get your child to do anything, and there is an expectation of you that your child does something, then you have set up the situation yourself as perpetuating this, you got to do something to get something mindset about talking. And if you want your child to do spontaneous talking, you have to teach them the words that are in their head. And here's how you know you're their parents, okay? You watch them. You look at them. If your child is holding something, you say the words of the things that are in their hand. If your child is exploring that thing, opening it and closing it, drinking from it, looking through it, examining it, touching it, smelling it, throwing it, whatever your child is doing with whatever they have in their hands should be the words that are coming out of your mouth. Without a prompt, without any kind of expectation of your child saying anything. Because first of all, you have to eliminate the expectations, both theirs and yours. They're expecting you to give them a prompt, and you're expecting them to give them a word. And it's a standoff. If you're waiting for spontaneous speech, right? You're just going to keep waiting, and they're just going to keep waiting. It's a standoff, right? So in order to teach your child how back and forth communication goes, you have to show them how that looks. You can't talk and stop and wait, because they're going to talk and stop. It's just like if your child used to sing all the songs, and then in order to get them to say more songs, you do the fill in the blanks. You say, Old MacDonald had a, hoping your child fills in the blank. But your child says, in response, Old MacDonald had a. And you were like, well, wait a minute, you didn't fill in the thing. And they're like, but you didn't say the thing. Because they learned how to talk by imitating you. So this also happens if your child answers your questions with a question. Do you want a cookie? And if the child says, do you want a cookie? To ask for a cookie, they're just imitating what you say, right? So these prompts that you're giving them, the questions, the things that you're trying to get them to do, that you think they're responding to as a real question or a prompt, they're just imitating you. They're just saying what you're saying in hopes that the key will open and they get the thing, or that you'll understand them. Because I promise, when they're not requesting and they're saying words or doing all the other things that they're using to communicate, you have to figure out what they want. If the child brings you something on purpose, when they want to bring it to you, they want you to do something with it. They want you to open it or give it to them or help them with it or whatever like that. Even if your child is saying the word cookie and they're bringing you the box of cookies, what's in their head is, may I have a cookie, please? Cookie, please, mommy. I would like a cookie. I had a cookie yesterday and it's cookie time. All those things that are happening in your kid's head that you just sort of know as a parent. You need to start saying those things out loud, in little phrases that your child can imitate. Because those things that you're saying that you want your child to hear, Do you want a cookie? Do you want cookie? Or blah, blah, blah. If you say those things and you're modeling that language, that's what your child's listening to. They're listening to you and they're just going to say what you're saying, okay? This is prompt-based teaching for speech. How to teach a child to say words. 101, prompts. Now, it doesn't teach natural language, so if you're looking for natural language, you have to stop the prompting. You have to stop it. Look at what your child is doing, holding, seeing, experiencing, and give them those words. Give them the words you think they would say if they could talk. That is how you help, all of you. Jackson, Masoon, Tanya, Parna, Shah, all of you do this. And you will see a difference in your child because all of your children are listening to you. They're saying the words that you say. They're saying the words that they hear. You're just not saying the right words. You're saying the words you want them to say, not the words they want to say. And how do you know what your child wants to say? You're their parent. You know what they want to say. You look at them and see it. I can do it looking at a restaurant. Think about making captions to movies that you don't see or memes that you see. Somebody makes a face like this. You know they're sad. Say it out loud. If your child has a tantrum, why are they having a tantrum? Say it out loud. Use the words that your child needs to say to you. They aren't going to learn it from anywhere else, and they're certainly not learning it from speech therapy. You are right there in the moment with your child, and this is how you teach them to use words with language facilitation. And by the way, all of you could learn how to do this super fast in my Waves of Communication programs. So if you want guidance and tell you exactly how to do, every single one of you could see new speech in a week if you learn how to do language facilitation properly. So you can watch my videos on YouTube and try to glon it out of all those strategies, or you can do my course and get it all straight for you and teach you for it. So I just got to let you know, you definitely, all of you, can see new language this summer. Every single person who I just talked to on your questions. If you do language facilitation, but you must eliminate your prompting first. Because if you don't stop your prompting, you're not going to see the spontaneous language you're looking for. It's confusing to your child. You have to shift them out of these prompt-based teaching methods and into listening to all the words that you are saying. You have to teach your child how to learn words from you. You are their best language facilitator. That's what I'll say about that. So, all right. So here's a question online from Trisha. I'm going to pop in because there's a couple more I have to do, but I want to talk to Trisha because she came to join me live. Thank you so much. And Trisha says, my son can often use longer sketches of words in song form or fake joking voice than his natural voice. Should I encourage more? Sorry, things are there. It's not there. Should I encourage more songs? Will that naturally transition into typical spoken speech, or is this hindering appropriate speech development? He's 5. Okay, so kids who are using songs and phrases, especially if they're using a sing-songy voice, la 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 la, they're talking just like the characters, that's echolalic speech and it has meaning behind it. And the songs and things that your child is looking at, it's similar to what I talked about with the hyperlexic child, okay? So that's the strategies your child has learned to communicate with you, and whatever, Trisha, you understand from him in those phrases, things that he uses, is what you're sort of grabbing onto as one of his language facilitation tools, okay? And in your case, you need to teach him a new tool. He needs to learn natural verbal speech. So whenever he is using these phrases and sing-songy things, it might be the only speech he feels comfortable using. Okay, you have to show him how that speech that he's saying converts into verbal speech that everyone can understand, that you know, that isn't just decipherable by you, his mom, who know him better than anyone. And it just happens to be when he talks like Peppa Pig, he wants this. When he talks like this character, he wants this. Or he has these feelings when he shares these characters' names and songs and things like that. Your child may be using these songs for entertainment value to make them feel regulated, which is fine. But once again, whenever someone asks me, should I do more or less of any kind of intervention, I throw it back to you as a parent to say, what is your child getting or learning, right, from this intervention? Now, are they getting entertainment value? Are they stimming? Is it fun? Because there are reasons that people just like to do things, and that's one reason to do it. But then the other reason is, the second reason that you need to know about is your child actually learning from this, or is this an obsession that's taking them down a path away from human contact, natural learning? And the way you can understand is, does your child allow you to interact with that skill? So if your child's watching songs or games or videos or whatever they like to do online, do they let you join them? Do they let you talk about that activity? Because that's language facilitation. Whenever you talk about whatever your child's interested in, if your child is only interested in tablets, first of all, you need to look at finding something else to get them interested in by converting what they enjoy about tablets into outdoor activities or other things. That's just a whole other topic. But the thing is about these songs and games, you have to find out what it is about these songs and games that he likes, and what about them is helpful to him. What about them invokes his superpowers that helps him learn the things he's learning from them? If he's not learning anything from them, then it's an addiction, and it's taking him down a path that's isolating him away from other people. And like I said, the way to know the difference is, how much will he let you interact? Or does he literally tune you out and focus on the videos and songs? Then you know that's not an activity that's a pleasure activity that you can't not allow if that's what your child's addicted to. Because if you go cold turkey, you're going to have behaviors and stuff like withdrawal behavior. But you have to understand that when you are allowing your child to do these things, that you have to have limits, just like sugar or candy or late night anything, okay? Realize what it is and what it's teaching your child. And that's how you know how much exposure you want to give. Because if your child is building blocks every day, and every day they're learning to build new construction things and they're developing their skills, you can let them play blocks for 8 hours a day if they want. They could be a genius engineer when they grow up. But if they're banging 2 blocks together and it's not getting them anywhere, and they bang the same 2 blocks over and over and over again for weeks on end, then this is a behavior that is inhibiting their progress. And I've done videos about that. You can see it on my YouTube channel. So that's where you go about songs and games and things like that. Okay. So let's see. I'm going to go back to a couple of the questions that I had from before, and I see that there's a couple in there. So don't use any screens, Trisha. So he's the, okay, wait. I hate when I see she has a little bit more. Not using screens, which is good. He likes being the class clown so he can interact with other kids at school. So that's his comfort zone. That's what he likes to do. He likes to sing and make the things, and that's how he's relating to kids. So I would be like, if that's his superpower is he's the class clown, he's probably using a lot of nonverbal communication in the songs and the whatever. And I would be working with him on giving him verbal speech that communicates those feelings. Like, look at me, I'm in charge, I'm the boss, pay attention, because that's real communication. And if he wants to be the star of the show and he wants kids to watch him, then help him learn the language to communicate what he's communicating. So it's kind of like Ben, who's the 13-year-old kiddo who wrote a book. His mom, he was having, trouble with wanting to do his homeschool work, and his mom said, let's just write about something. And they saw a superhero movie, and it turned into a book that now he's communicating with other kids with autism about how autism is a superpower, and every child has different superpowers about their autism. And so this mom just converted what he loved into an activity that helps him use communication in a way that he never did before. Because now because he's got this YouTube channel, not YouTube, but Facebook, I think he's got a YouTube too, but because he's doing interviews and talking to people, through his videos, his mom is able to teach him a whole new level of language that isn't just regurgitation of memorized information, which is what ends up happening with older late talkers who get talking. They just want to share the ideas that are in their head once they learn how to do it, but they don't learn how to listen and process to other people. And that's why language facilitation must continue on as your kids get older. They can't rely even on the verbal systems that they develop if they develop them from a memorization standpoint. Memorization may be your child's superpower. They may be so good at, listening to volumes of information, a 20-minute video, and potentially could tell you all the topics from it. But it's not functional conversational speech. And there must be this level of conversational, functional language facilitation exchange that happens in your home every day, no matter how old your child is, from the time they're 2 to the time they're 22, if they're living in your home. Because if you don't facilitate that conversational back and forth, talking about the things that your child has in your own words, not words that were memorized, not words that you read off a paper, things like that, because they're amazing at doing that. And it makes them look great, but it's not real verbal speech. It's just an advanced stage of what I talked about with these single words. Because they don't know how to expand. Little kids can't expand between 1 to 3 words because that's all they can hold in their memory as chunks. But if you've got a superpower memorizer on your hands, they're going to memorize what do you want to have today for your lunch? And that's what's going to come out. They're going to memorize the whole entire Peppa Pig episode. They're going to memorize the whole entire song. And they're going to do it in front of their friends and hope their friends are interpreting the real messages they have behind these actions and words that they learn. The only ones that can do it on a regular basis all day, every day are parents. Their friends are looking at them putting on a show. Right? And that's the way they interact with their friends, and that's okay. Some kids, that's how they do. Think about some actors have very poor social skills until they get on stage, and then they can be amazing. But if that's your child's superpower, you got to use it. So use performance and put them in a show, teach them how to do that. But the whole process of learning the lines for the show and the memorization and talking to different people and relating to different people with different personalities. This is the skill that helps your child be an effective verbal speech communicator and not just someone who regurgitates the things that they hear, because that's not real talking, right? If you want your child to share the words that are in their heart, you have to help them learn how to do that. Put together the words that they know, all those words that they've listened to and heard in songs and phrases and from you. And they don't know how to combine it and put together in real words at their level because they're too busy trying to pick out the phrases from the long things you're saying or the videos that they watch over and over again, and they just don't know the skills of how to put it together. And when you demonstrate for them, and don't assume that they know how to combine things just because they understand what you're saying. It's difference between, if you learn a foreign language, understanding it and being able to speak it to someone at conversational level. Expressive verbal speech is a foreign language to late talkers. You have to teach it kind of like a foreign language, right? So that's how it goes, right? So good that you don't use screens. Very good. It is interactive, probably not age appropriate, right? So that's it. Probably not age appropriate because it's what your child loves and they're going to be communicating what they love, Trisha. So again, you have to go where your child is and you always have to match what they are. This is how we do reach and teach. You can't expect your child to do things just because other kids are doing them their age. You can only expect your child to try at things that you make super easy. Easy, happy, safe, and fun. If it's too challenging for you, if it feels like, wow, this is going to be a tricky one, it's too hard. It should be so easy that with your help, your child can do it every single time, not just 80%, not just 90%, every single time. Never ask your child to do anything you aren't willing to help them do, because otherwise you're setting them up to fail, and that's how it goes. So here's sort of another situation that someone talked about. It's Zizo, who has a nephew with severe autism who's 7.5 and also reportedly has a tongue tie. I don't know what that tongue tie looks like, and I'm not in the business of evaluating tongue ties, but tongue tie can cause a child to not talk, especially if they're a late talker. So what I suspect happens, this 7.5-year-old is nonverbal altogether, probably with an autism diagnosis, and it takes a lot of effort to overcome a physiological problem like a tongue tie. And if a child isn't comfortable using verbal speech and they have another system in place, i.e., parents are anticipating their needs, they're using nonverbal things to communicate, they scream and get what they want. If a nonverbal child gets to be 7.5, a lot of people are accommodating them. And it could be that this 7.5-year-old child has literally been accommodated through life until they get to be 7.5. That's the only reason late talkers stay nonverbal, is because the other systems that they have are working. Kids learn to talk when they learn that talking works better than those systems. And if those other systems are working fine because everyone else in the child's life is enabling them to use other people to understand what they want by their behaviors. So if a child is communicating with behaviors, it can be as subtle as a smile and they get what they want. Do you want this? A child smiles, they get it. And if that works for 7.5 years, for a child who has limited interest in understanding and following and even engaging with other people, it's going to stay for the rest of their life. If the child has a tongue tie on top of that limited facilitation of verbal speech and language, then they're going to choose not to use verbal speech in a hard way. It's too hard, my mouth doesn't work, and that's a true statement. So if you want a child to be able to speak clearly, their mouth has to be freely functioning, also ears, also throat, also brain, and a child has to be able to focus on you at least sometimes so that you can teach them the language that they need. So if a child has a tongue tie, no matter how severe, it must be corrected in order for them to have natural verbal speech. Okay, next one is an 11-year-old child who is a verbal talker, who potentially was a late talker but is already 11, and I've only been talking about late talking for a couple of years, so this is a situation. So this little guy, 11-year-old's been in speech forever, is still working on the TH and L sound. This is Sue's question, by the way, from my language facilitation group. Her child's 11 years old, has been in speech literally forever, probably since he was 2, and is still in speech working on the TH and L sounds, as well as some other things that are going on with organizing his thoughts and fluency of speech. So he stutters sometimes. So my guess is, first of all, if we're talking about TH and L, if your child hasn't corrected those things on his own in speech therapy, it's not going to happen, and that's a complete waste of your time. If you want your child to fix the TH and L sounds, there are ways that you can teach him how to do it very quickly, but he has to want to create those things, especially as an 11-year-old. He has to spontaneously want to choose to correct his speech. If he's saying those things wrong, like an F for a TH, or he's eliminating those things, then he's not focusing on using those accurate speech patterns that he has learned in speech therapy. He could previously have had a lot of speech sound problems. Maybe he had ear infections, and those are some of the later ones that are getting fixed. But usually when someone tells me that a child has problems with specific articulation sounds like the L sound or the R sound or the S sound, that means that that's what the therapist has been working on, is just saying words in that one sound. And if that doesn't correct in a child, that means that the parents aren't helping facilitate natural speech at home, and the child's only getting practice saying those accurate sounds in the speech therapy session. And at school, they're probably not reinforcing it, and at home, you're probably not reinforcing it. So if you want your child to practice those sounds and say them more clearly, you must do a lot more drill work and practice than your speech therapist is doing, and I would even have them take it off of his speech therapy IEP, because it's a waste of time, whatever time he's getting at school at 11 years old. He doesn't need to be in speech therapy for that. The other thing that they potentially are working on as his IEP goals for speech, IEP is individualized education plan, and it's required for any children who have speech therapy in schools. This is where the goals are written, and it's the document that says that the school gets funding to have a speech therapist work with your child, and your child has been determined to have these skills as educationally necessary for them to be successful in school. And so it's a whole education document. And on that document should be indicated the goals that the speech therapist is working on with your child, and then you see the progress. So getting together his thoughts and the disfluency of his speech could be happening at 11 years old already, where he is potentially doing public speaking in school and things like that. And at 11 years old, it should be very functional kind of work. Your child shouldn't be pulled out of class to work on these skills. These are things that you potentially could help him and during his academics to use better in public speaking and things like that. If you wanted very specific ideas in what to do to correct these issues yourself at home with your child, you could join my Waves of Communication program and get those specific strategies from me. It's not typically set up for kids who go to a public school to have a speech therapist do this kind of communication with you, which is why you probably don't know what's going on for him as far as speech. And I guarantee if he's 11, it's not very much. He's getting it in a group, and that's why there hasn't been much progress. So if a child is in for these kinds of issues, you might even consider just having him spend his next school year a lot more time in the classroom and learn how to do these speech and language facilitation things yourself, because it's taken away from his, especially middle school. Don't want him pulled out for these things in speech. Yeah, okay, and then Asanda has a 3-year-old who's babbling a lot, who probably, I think Asanda's been watching my my questions for a while, my Q&As, my videos for a while, and she has a really nice statement and question. She says that her 3-year-old is babbling a lot, repeating what she's saying, playing and imitating everything that they do, and she is also starting to play with other children. Does this mean that she's ready to start verbal speech? And the answer to that question is yes. All of those are signs that you are communicating with your child using the right kind of language that they are interested in listening to. And they might not be great at saying those words on their own, but they're trying to say words like you are saying. So my only suggestion for you, Aparna, is maybe limit your talking down. If you hear a lot of babbling with just single words in there, you might want to limit your presentation of speech to your child down to just 2 and 3 words at a time. Even though your little one can understand, let's go get your shoes, it's time to go to grandma's house, and they can follow that direction very easily, that your child may not be able to imitate speech at that level yet, and is trying to. That's why you hear, we're gonna go bye-bye, we're gonna go to shoes, you know, ba-ba-da-ba-da-ba-da-do, you know, that kind of thing. If your child is doing that kind of babbling, that means that the phrases that you're saying are too long, and your child's desperately trying to do everything and sound exactly like you, which is exactly where you want them, right? You want your child to be watching you all the time. So now the next task is really focus on making sure that all the words that are coming out of your mouth, Aparna, are the words that your child would say if they could be talking. And then you'll start to hear those words come out more often, guaranteed. All right, let's see. And then there's one more question here, and then there's a couple more on the screen. July has a 2-year-old who she said stopped saying words and doesn't want to repeat words or bring things, because all she said is, her statement was, my 2-year-old used to say words and now doesn't say words anymore. Why doesn't my child want to show me the things that they've learned? Okay, and then my response, I asked her, what kinds of things are you wanting your child to do? And she said she wants her child to repeat words, and the child doesn't want to bring things or whatever when she asks, bring me this or do this. So July, what's going on with you is you are sliding very rapidly into that prompting mindset where you are trying to get your child to do. You're laying expectations on your 2-year-old all day to do these things, and if your child is stopping saying things that they used to say, that means that they feel pressure from you. I always say it's kind of like a magnet. The more you push, it's like a repelling magnet. You push your child away. There's literally a space in the middle, this field, where your kids understand what's going on with you. But otherwise, if it gets blocked by a prompt or whatever, then the message can't communicate, and your child actually repels. Oh no, you're not. I came to you to communicate something, and you're gonna make me work. No thanks, I'm out of here. If you see your child going away from you, that means you're pushing too hard. You're prompting, and your child doesn't like it. And your child can't learn from you if they don't like how you teach them. Easy, happy, safe, and fun. Model what your child does, and I promise you, it happens to every family in my program 100% of the time. When they stop the prompting, their kids start talking. every single time. So July, that's my challenge for you. Think about how many times you ask your child a question or fill in the blank or show me or a do this, and stop doing that for one day and see what changes in your child. See how much more they come to you to talk. See how much more they do whatever. Stop ordering them around and doing the quiz show all day so that they can do it. Okay, let's see. Here we go. A couple more questions from online. Dylan says, do you have any recommendations for him? By the way, we speak English, 2 languages home, but he speaks English. Okay, so Dylan. I don't know. Oh, wait, here. Hold on. Looking for more questions. Yeah, there we go. Trisha. Pam says, my grandson's 2 and nonverbal. Recent evaluation confirmed autism, but autism, Pam, does not tell you what's going on to cause your child's late talking. Autism diagnosis just tells you that your child meets the criteria for autism diagnosis, and there are children who have lots of things going on that meet the diagnostic terms for autism. If your grandson is 2 and just got diagnosed, I'm here to tell you that you should look on my YouTube channel for videos about autism diagnosis and why children should not be diagnosed with autism younger than 3.5 to 4 years old, because there is a strong possibility that there are other things causing your grandson's late talking other than autism. And if your child gets into ABA therapy, it could do more damage than help your grandson learn to talk. So there's a lot more investigation you need to do than just autism diagnosis. So there are videos in my YouTube channel that you can watch about that. Look for that. Go to wavesofcommunication.com and look for autism diagnosis under my hot topics. You can see them all there. So like I said, there's lots and lots of things that cause late talking, and most of the time, 99% of the time, they are diagnosed as autism, even if they aren't. So watch those videos, because there's more you need to know than ASD diagnosis, and that's the answer to that question. Okay, so Dylan says, do you have any recommendations for, okay, wait, Dylan, I didn't see your question before. He likes to read everything and he saw and repeated what was saying for him. Okay, so yeah, so if you're speaking 2 languages at home, so that's what Dylan says. Dylan says, do I have any recommendations? They're 2-year-old, they speak 2 languages at home. And he only speaks English. So late talkers, just like every other child, there's nothing wrong with their ability to learn to talk. There's no neurological problem that impedes their ability to learn language. The blockages that are happening are due to environmental and exterior things. It has to do with how they're taught. So 2 languages makes no difference. In fact, I have many, many families in my program who their parents speak 2 languages at home, and their late talkers also learn to speak 2 languages. There is a video on my YouTube channel all about teaching children in bilingual homes how to work with both languages. There are specific strategies, including things like only speaking 1 language at a time and speaking the language that feels most comfortable for you at the moment. Because even if you are not speaking to your child in your other language, if you're only using English and not your mother tongue at home, if you're just using that maybe with the adults, your child is hearing it. If you watch videos, if you watch television in that other language, your child is hearing it. So what you need to understand is that it really does happen that late talkers learn 2 languages at the same time, but they learn the same way. The prompt-based language is not going to work in either situation. So this is how it goes. If your child is imitating everything you say, then they're waiting for you to prompt them, and you need to model the speech that they are wanting to say. So that's how that goes for you, Dylan. Shweta says, my son's 4.3. He repeats words, but no functional speech, not even need-based, just repeating words. So your son, Shweta, is saying words that for pleasure or for whatever reason. Like I said, he's trying still to get you to guess what's in his mind by his behaviors. And he may be saying the same word over and over, but you're the one who has to understand what that means by looking at all of the things about him and not taking those words at face value. When you see that he's upset, you have to find out why he's upset. If you see that he is happy, you have to find out why he is happy and say the words for those things so that he understands that words are valuable to him. Because right now, he's nonverbal, using whatever he's using to communicate with you, and you're understanding it. And nobody's teaching him the natural verbal speech that he needs. You're just sort of expecting him to not talk, or expecting him to talk and he's not doing it and he thinks it's too hard. Whatever it is, there's a gap in the middle where you haven't reached him. You have to get into what he's thinking. If you don't know what he's thinking, you're not getting in deep enough. That means you have to spend time quietly next to him. I've done a video on reach and teach on my YouTube channel. You can see how to reach and teach nonverbal kids, how to get into their space and know what they're thinking as their parents, and turn those things into the words that you know they would say if they could talk. And that's how they learn what those words are. And that's how you do it with nonverbal kids. If your boy's getting ABA, okay, just want to make sure. Boy's getting ABA, how do I make him talk if he feels hungry and control echolocation? So he's 5.5 and he repeats every sentence and delay back and forth, communication, how it develops, right? So Aparna, because your son's in ABA, he is learning that everything he does is exchange-based. And if he's learning to use a picture to communicate those things, you have to realize that at home, you must stop doing that prompting. The reason he's not using natural speech is because you're expecting him to do something that he can't do. And he doesn't like it. Nobody likes to be expected to do something that they can't do. You're expecting him to spontaneously switch into back and forth communication when all day at ABA therapy, he's learning to communicate with a prompt. He's imitating. He's doing what people say. Do this. Say this. What's this? Show me. Give me the picture all day long, prompting, 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 prompting. And like I said earlier, the only way to get kids to shift from this mindset of there is a situation set up for me, it has to be set up for me to communicate. Somebody has to prompt it, I have to respond, that's how I get what I want, right? And your son's not even using words to get those things, he's just saying happy, happy words to make him happy. Like he's not even responding to those things. So that's where you have to really get in and reach him. To just, if he's repeating words with no functional speech, that means you haven't reached him. You know, you have to understand if those words that he's repeating are not taught, are not communication. They're sensory expression of happiness. I mean, you know, it might not seem like at face value it's communication, but it is communication of something. It's communicating his feelings, otherwise he wouldn't be doing it, okay? He's not doing, kids even who STEM, they're not doing these things without knowing, unless they're injuring themselves or something. They're doing it for a reason. They're either soothing their sensory systems or they are communicating something. And if a child has a meltdown and then they turn it off, that's communication. That's the same as I don't like it, now I like it. I mean, it's just not words to use. So this is what the difference is between the talking, right? And just using speech as a behavior to make something happen or as a communication. Not even need-based, also just repeating, right? Like I said, Shweta, if your child's not using words for needs, they're using something else to get their needs met. You have to interpret that into words. That's how it works. That's how your child's learn that words replace those behaviors. And ABA is all about behaviors replacing behaviors. Okay, you say the verbal word instead of doing the behavior to get what you want. But this is different than teaching your child, when you do this, do this. You have to model what it looks like. Your child has to see you talking to them naturally without any expectation. And I challenge you, Shweta, how many times do you talk to your child with no expectation of them to say or do anything? Because I'll bet more often than not, everything you say to your child has to result in your child doing something. Because if your child's nonverbal, talking them for fun isn't necessarily it. And I challenge you to start to talk to your child for fun. Join them in the words that they're saying for fun and see what happens. In fact, I just posted a video today of a dad with a toddler having some gibberish talk while they looked at a movie, and that was better connection than any kind of structured language teaching. His boy is learning how to have a conversation about the video they were watching with no words at all. He learned that when you say stuff, you do stuff, you look at someone, you engage, and there was no, it was jibber jabber, right? And this is what you have to do with nonverbal kids. They're communicating you using jibber jabber. You get in there and use it. Reach them where they are. Communicate those things. If he drags your hand and communicates, that's communication. Turn it into words. Whatever you think he would say or you would like him to say, don't expect it to happen. Just say it over and over and over again. And Shweta, you folks who are stuck in this situation where your kid, you feel like you can't do it, these are the families who benefit from working with me, okay? In my program, I can analyze your whole situation and I can tell you exactly what you're doing that's blocking your child's talking. I'm giving you ideas here because I can't see your child and I can't see your situation. But if you are interested in knowing how to fix this problem, this is what I know how to do, is to fix this problem. But it's not an overnight process. It's a whole, in fact, there's 8 phases of stages that you have to go through as a parent of a nonverbal child to become a language facilitator. 8 stages. I made it in my independent study course. And if you want to know what those stages are and how to move through them all seamlessly yourself as an independent study, you can do my independent study course. It's only $500 and you can learn the whole process start to begin. If you don't have that kind of money, you can go on my YouTube channel and dig through the videos and find the strategies to do it, because there's things on how to make a plan, there's things how to do it. But the thing is, guys, you have to make changes. Every family in my program, it's not just adding stuff on top of what you're doing. There are fundamental things that are happening in your home right now that are blocking your child moving forward with this natural verbal speech. If you're watching this video and you see, you see repetitive behaviors, you see mimicking. In fact, there's a mom in my program right now who, there are a couple of them, who are just stuck because they're seeing things with mimicking things. The more they prompt, the more they prompt, the more they prompt, their kids are finally starting to do things with prompting. But they saw better engagement and focus when they do language facilitation, but they can't give up the prompting and their kids are still not talking. And that's happening to parents in my program. So that's why seriously, if you stop prompting, the more you stop it, the faster your kids talk. If you just give up prompting at home and your child still goes to 30 hours a week of ABA, it's going to be harder to overcome this situation. If your child goes to 2 hours of ABA and you have the rest of your time you're doing language facilitation, you got a chance. Because those people at ABA, they don't have a whole lot of time with your child to get them stuck in exchange-based, prompt-based learning mindsets. But kids who have 20 to 30 hours a week of ABA can't make this shift easily. Parents have a real challenging time with it. And that's a decision that you have to make, okay? You have to think about all of those ABA hours, and parents in my program, they usually start by cutting it in half at least. And then they eventually work their way out of it because they find that what they're doing at home is seeing faster results in their child learning speech and language than the ABA. So I'm never here to say stop anything that's working for your child, but I am here to tell you, and I found it with 50 families that I have worked with personally. Of those 50 families, every family who stopped prompting, their kids started talking fast. But the ones that couldn't give up the prompting, it took longer. And the ones that never gave up prompting, their kids never got talking. And that's the difference between how it works with language facilitation. This is what I found as a speech pathologist working in the field, and this is what I'm seeing also in real life and what happens. So Dylan says, sorry, something got in the way. He's 3.5, doesn't have autism now. Good. Starts to say what he wants, likes when he needs to eat or drink or go and play to the park. That's great. So these are things that he's using to tell you on his own instead of gestures. So like the other moms whose kids are like banging on the door to go outside, your child's actually starting to use words to tell you when he wants to do things, which is great, and it's the first step. Kids always learn words first to request things. And now's the time when you really need to jump on your language facilitation to talk about all the words that are in your child's head, not just the things they want. Things like, you know, this kitty is soft and this food tastes yummy, not just to get the food, but why they like it, why it's cool, what's cool about it. It's a big airplane, it's a loud airplane, you know, all the things that your child is super interested in, their superpower. You need to be using words for all the things, the actions, the movements, the locations, the characteristics. You know, it's a big thing, it's a yellow thing, it's a wet thing, it's a happy time. I love it when you play with me. This is a fun trip to the park. Your child needs to hear all those words in order to say them. And if they're in therapy and then at home you're prompting all the time too, this is what's going to be challenging for you to overcome as a language facilitator parent. So that's the challenge that I have for you out there, parents who are watching this, is, you know, if you can stop prompting at home and just have a good time with your child, you might see more language without doing anything else, because it's not about doing more. I say often to the parents in my program, we are human beings, not human doings. But our world is all about do more, get more. And that's not how language works. That's not how engaged and sharing of ideas works. Sharing of ideas works with sharing experiences together, talking about those experiences with your child in a way that your child always can understand you, not above their level, not below their level, right at their level, using speech that they can understand all the time, never above or below, and that they could imitate in the words, not expecting them to imitate it, but just saying those words. So maybe next time they'll listen. This time they're listening, next time they'll say it. And if they don't say it next time, it's okay. Next time they're listening too, and the following time, and the following time, and the following time. Because when you keep talking, you can't just do this for one day. You have to do it ongoing so your child learns how language works. It's how your kids learn how everything works. They get really good at getting ready for school and getting out the door and getting to school by September or October, but for the first 2 weeks, it's a mayhem, right? Did you forget your thing? Did you have your whatever? Did I sign the paper? Did I do whatever, right? But once you get in the habits, your new language facilitation habits, where you're not prompting and blocking your child's progress and you're just having a good time in facilitating language, that's when the spontaneous language comes. That's when the language you want to see comes. It's not when you pull it out. Spontaneous is the opposite of you pulling it out. So that's what I'm going to leave you with today, okay? I've been on here talking for an hour already with parents for live Q&A, and I'll be back next Thursday with more questions. In the meantime, everybody, if you feel like you're stuck and these strategies sound real great, but I don't know how it works in my life, that's when you need to look into working with me as a consultant to teach you how to do this. You can do it online as independent study in my Waves of Communication independent study course. You can have me just create your plan and go from there with my starter program, or you can have me hold your hand through the entire process. And people are signing up for my program every week, getting their strategies, getting their kids talking in weeks, not months, not years. And I am telling you, with the videos that I put out this summer and the videos that are on my YouTube channel, if you as a parent really want to see your kids start talking by school year starting, by August, then you can make it happen, because parents did it last summer working with me, and now there's enough videos out there for everybody to be able to do it. And you can join me next Thursday to ask questions about your situation and let me know. Right, so Dylan says, all the time we make him say this and say thank you and say I love you. Right, don't make him do it anymore. Don't tell him to do it anymore. Just model it and show him and see what happens. I promise, the less you prompt and make your child do stuff, the more they'll want to do it on their own. Think about you. Think about how you would be as a parent if you wanted somebody else. So you're welcome, everybody who says thanks. Dylan and everybody else says thanks so much for all of these tips. I'm happy to help, and I'll be back next Thursday, 2 p.m. Eastern time, right here on my Waves of Communication page, where you can ask more questions. And if you have any questions in the meantime, you can reach out to me, send me a private message on Facebook or an email, marcy@wavesofcommunication.com. Thanks again, everybody, and I'll see you all next week. But in the meantime, I'll be on with a couple more live videos. So get with your language facilitation. Work with your kiddos. There's nobody stopping you. There's all kinds of stuff out here and strategies that you can get going. And I hope you see new speech this summer for your late talker.